You won't believe what happened to me. I was just an ordinary parent, living in a quiet neighborhood, thinking everything was fine, until one day my baby was taken. The Homeowners Association, HOA, of all people, kidnapped my child because of a few unpaid fees. I never imagined things could escalate this far, but when I didn't pay on time, they decided to take matters into their own hands. Imagine this: your HOA, the group supposed to protect your community, suddenly becomes the very ones who cause you harm. They claimed that my unpaid dues gave them the right to hold my baby, threatening to keep them until I settled the debt. It wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a calculated move, one that shocked me to my core. Now, they're facing federal charges, and the situation is getting more complicated by the day. How could something so outrageous happen? How could a group of people, entrusted with managing a neighborhood, cross the line in such a dangerous way? The story doesn't end here. This is just the beginning. In the next part, I'll reveal what happened when I took action and the unbelievable twists that followed. Stay tuned. I never thought something as simple as unpaid fees could lead to this nightmare. It all started a few months ago when I received a letter from the HOA warning me about overdue payments. At first, it seemed like just another reminder, something I could easily resolve. But then the fines kept piling up, and I found myself dealing with more than just paperwork. They started sending increasingly aggressive letters, threatening late fees and legal action. I thought it was just part of their standard procedure, but I soon realized they were serious about their demands. One evening, after a particularly stressful week, I came home to find my door locked from the inside. At first, I thought maybe I had lost my keys, but when I called my partner to check, they were just as confused. That's when I got the call from the HOA. They said, in the coldest tone imaginable, that they were holding my child until the fees were paid. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like something out of a horror story. I raced to the HOA office, heart pounding, praying that it was some kind of sick joke. But what I walked into was far worse than I could have imagined. The person in charge wasn't even fazed, almost as if this was a normal thing for them. The deeper I got into this mess, the more I realized it wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about power. When I arrived at the HOA office, I was met with cold, indifferent faces. They didn't seem like people who were there to help. They were the ones causing all the chaos. The office was sterile, almost clinical, like a place where empathy didn't exist. I demanded to speak to the person in charge, and that's when I met Charles, the HOA president. His calm demeanor was unnerving, like he was acting like this was all part of the job. "You know the rules," he said, almost too casually. "Unpaid dues mean you forfeit certain privileges. It's right there in the fine print of your agreement." But what he said next took me completely by surprise. We had no choice. The community needed you to understand the seriousness of your negligence. I stood there in shock, unable to comprehend what he was implying. My baby, my innocent child, held hostage in some twisted form of discipline. I demanded to know where they were keeping my child, but Charles didn't answer. Instead, he handed me another letter, this one marked with a red stamp that said, "Final Notice." That's when things began to unravel further. I started hearing whispers from some of the other residents, those who had dealt with the HOA before, those who had fallen victim to its ruthlessness. Some mentioned the unwritten rules of the community and how the HOA used fear and control to maintain power. People were scared to speak out, but a few brave souls hinted at darker secrets. The more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about me or unpaid fees. It was part of something bigger, something that had been happening for years. The HOA's control over the neighborhood seemed almost absolute, and those who tried to challenge it found themselves facing escalating consequences. But why? What was their true agenda? And how far were they willing to go to maintain their grip on power? I was at a crossroads. I couldn't just walk away. I had to get my child back. But the deeper I went, the more dangerous this became. People started warning me to stop digging, telling me the HOA wasn't something I wanted to mess with. But I had no choice. I couldn't let this go. The stakes were too high, and the mystery of what the HOA was really up to was growing darker by the minute. I couldn't back down now. Every part of me was screaming to get my child back, but there was more at play here than just a simple dispute over unpaid fees. The whispers I had heard about the HOA's control weren't just rumors, they were warnings. As I started to piece things together, I realized the HOA wasn't just an ordinary neighborhood management group. It was a powerful, shadowy force that operated like a cult, using fear and manipulation to keep everyone in line. I found an old resident, someone who'd lived in the neighborhood for decades, who seemed to know more than anyone. She told me, in hushed tones, that this wasn't the first time that HOA had taken drastic action. Over the years, there had been rumors about people who disappeared after crossing the HOA. Of course, no one had ever been brave enough to speak up before, and those who tried were either silenced or intimidated into submission. But this was different. Now, it was personal. The more I dug, the more disturbing facts came to light. I uncovered hidden documents detailing financial dealings, shady contracts, and even threats against residents who dared challenge the HOA's authority. Everything seemed to be connected. Every fine, every rule, every ridiculous demand was part of a much larger game. I couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA wasn't just a neighborhood group. They were in too deep, maybe even with people in high places. With every lead, I was getting closer to the truth, but I was also getting closer to something much more dangerous. Late one night, after I had gathered enough evidence, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a familiar voice, Charles, chilled me to the bone. "You're making a mistake," he said. "If you don't stop now, you'll regret it. We don't just control this neighborhood. We control everything." I didn't hesitate. I had to take action, no matter the cost. But as I prepared to confront the HOA once and for all, I realized something terrifying. The deeper I went, the more I was becoming a part of this dangerous game, and I didn't know who I could trust anymore. As I stood outside the HOA office, ready to make my move, a black SUV pulled up. Two men in dark suits stepped out, men I'd never seen before. They weren't from the HOA, but they knew exactly who I was. My heart raced. I had no idea what they wanted, but I knew it couldn't be good. Was I walking straight into a trap? The moment of truth was approaching. Would I be able to get my baby back? Would I expose the HOA for what it really was? Or was I already in too deep? The clock was ticking, and I could feel the walls closing in. As the men in dark suits approached, I felt a cold shiver crawl up my spine. My mind raced with possibilities. Were they part of the HOA? Had they come to silence me before I could expose them? I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest, but before I could make a move, one of the men spoke. "We know what you're doing," he said, his voice low but clear. "And we've been watching you. You've been digging into things you shouldn't." For a second, I thought I might pass out. How could they know everything? How could they be tracking me? This was bigger than I thought. The man continued, his expression unreadable. "If you think you're going to walk away from this unscathed, you're wrong. We control much more than just this neighborhood. The HOA, that's just the tip of the iceberg." I wanted to fight back, to yell at them, but the words wouldn't come. A million thoughts swirled in my head. Who were these people? And why were they involved? This wasn't just about unpaid fees anymore. I was in over my head. Then, without warning, the man pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. I didn't want to take it, but something made me reach out. As I unfolded the paper, my eyes scanned the contents. It was a legal document, one that changed everything. The HOA wasn't just about controlling residents. It was a front for something far more sinister. The document detailed plans for a massive development project, one that would destroy the entire neighborhood, wipe out everything I had ever known. But it was more than just construction. It was about turning the land into something dark, something powerful, something. Dangerously felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just about getting my baby back. This was about stopping something that could affect far more than just me. But the real shock came when I saw the final line at the bottom of the page. Asterisk, asterisk, this project is backed by the highest bidders. Asterisk, asterisk. My mind raced. Who could possibly be involved in such a massive operation? Who had the power to back something like this? And why had they chosen our community as their playground? This wasn't just a kidnapping anymore. It was a full-scale conspiracy, and the stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined. I turned to the men, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" I asked, desperate for answers. One of them smiled, but it wasn't comforting. "You're already part of this now, whether you like it or not." The walls around me felt like they were closing in. Everything had been building to this moment, but I wasn't ready for what I was about to discover. I didn't know who I could trust anymore, and with the truth slipping out of my grasp, I realized that the danger was only just beginning. The final showdown was coming, and I had no idea who would come out on top. I felt like the ground had just been pulled from under me. Everything I thought I knew was crumbling. My baby, the HOA, the strange men in suits, it was all part of something much bigger, something more dangerous. I had to act fast, but the fear was suffocating. If I didn't make the right move now, everything would be lost. I made a choice right then. I wasn't backing down, no matter how deep this went. I grabbed the envelope from the man's hand and stormed toward the office, ready to confront Charles and anyone else who was involved. I had to get my child, but I also needed answers, and I knew this was my only shot. When I arrived, Charles was there, waiting for me with that same cold, calculating look in his eyes. He didn't say anything at first. He just watched me as if he already knew what I was thinking. But I couldn't hold it in any longer. "You've been using this HOA to control everything, haven't you?" I demanded, my voice shaking but firm. "This isn't about fees. It's about something much darker. This whole neighborhood is just a front for a massive development plan, isn't it?" Charles' eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he might attack me, but then he sighed. "You think you understand, but you don't. This was never just about money or land. This is about the future. The HOA isn't just a group. We've built something bigger than you can imagine." Before I could react, he gestured to the back of the office. There, standing in the shadows, was my child. Alive, safe, but staring at me with an unfamiliar coldness. For a split second, I didn't recognize them. Something was off. My heart skipped a beat. What had they done to my baby? But the real shock came when Charles spoke again. "You're too late. It's already in motion. The project has begun, and no one can stop it now. Your child is the key." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My child, the key? What did that even mean? Just as I was about to demand more answers, the door slammed open behind me. I turned around to see the two men in suits, but this time there was something different about them. They weren't there to intimidate. They were there to help. "You're not going to stop this," one of them said, his voice calm but full of authority. "But we can. We've been working with a group who's been trying to expose the HOA for years. We've been waiting for the right moment, and now it's here." The room fell silent. My heart was racing. Were these people the allies I'd been looking for? The tension was unbearable, but before I could process what was happening, everything went black.